Good afternoon and welcome to One Police Plaza. I want to take a moment to discuss this past holiday weekend. While we entered this weekend in our 11th consecutive week in declines in shootings and homicides, the unacceptable, brazen, and senseless violence over the holiday weekend in some instances goes back to exactly what we've said several times. These are violent criminals who should not be on the street, either because of a lengthy criminal record or because of open cases. But 5 homicides over the weekend have already been closed out with arrests. We seized 55 firearms and made 57 gun arrests over the weekend, and there were a total of 580 major felony arrests. We shut down Loud Party after unruly gathering, after reported and unreported disturbance. We doubled our quality of life enforcement. We dispersed unruly, countless crowds. Some of them were 20 people deep, which requires multiple officers to do so safely. We knew going into this weekend as the 4th of July, as the city fully reopens, required a significant amount of resources, and that is exactly what we deployed. Your NYPD was out there for the overwhelming number of people who simply wanted and deserved to have a nice holiday weekend with their friends and families. We will continue our strategies that have worked and initiate new ones to adapt to changing conditions. We will apprehend, charge, and hold the criminals in this city accountable and seek real consequences for their behavior. We at the NYPD know we have challenges, and we step forward to face them. But we should not have to face them from within our own criminal justice system. The NYPD continues to be out there every single day and night in an effort to make the city safe and improve the quality of life for New Yorkers. We'll take questions tomorrow when we have our statistics press conference. Today, though, we are pleased to be here with Ralph Sozio, the U.S. Marshal of the Southern District of New York, Chief Inspector Edward McMahon, Commander of the U.S. Marshal's New York, New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force, the Chief of Detectives, James Essig, and the Deputy Chief, Michael Kletzel, CO of the NYPD's Fugitive Enforcement Division. Today, we are announcing the results of a focused, collective effort to bring some of New York City's most violent, wanted criminals to justice. This month-long, nationwide operation is a perfect example of how public safety is definitely a shared responsibility. It takes all of us working together to effectively safeguard the people we serve. And the partnerships we are highlighting today are at the very heart of that effort. We all know that criminals are not restricted by precinct boundaries, county lines, or agency jurisdictions. So in law enforcement, we can't be either. That means we must coordinate, communicate, and organize our resources the best we can. Because we're all focused on one thing: keeping people safe. From New York City to New York State and across the nation. That is the mission. And fugitive enforcement requires this high level of collaboration. The NYPD is proud to work with all of our partners in our local and state and federal agencies to identify, locate, and apprehend these dangerous criminals. This is about targeted, intelligence-driven crime fighting. And above all else, again, it's about consequences. If you commit a violent felony in our city, we will find you. We will arrest you, and we will build a case to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. But to this point, this initiative also highlighted an issue we have been dealing with for far too long. These are violent criminals who committed violent crimes against people in our community. But despite the seriousness of these offenses and the obvious danger these suspects pose to our city, 1/3 of the arrests made in New York City during this operation were of people who were previously arrested, arraigned, released, and then failed to appear in court. They were sent back into the same neighborhoods they had terrorized, sometimes just days before. This is a problem we must address, and we cannot ignore it. But in any event, we know what we have to do. We will be relentless in our pursuit of justice and in our commitment to safeguard this city. All of us here know the stakes, and we know that they cannot be any higher. So we will never waver in our sworn duty to keep people safe, and we will continue to deepen and enhance the law enforcement partnership that makes this critical work possible. And now I'd like to turn it over to the U.S. Marshal for the Southern District, Ralph Sozio, who will provide further details on this enforcement initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank the New York City Police Department for their committed partnership, along with the New York State Police, New York State Parole, Probation, Sheriff's Department, and other agencies that are currently participating in the New York, New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force. The U.S. Marshal Service has conducted a high-impact fugitive apprehension initiative focusing on the country's most violent offenders in 10 cities across America. This 30-day initiative, beginning on June 1st and commenced on June 30th, called Operation North Star, resulted in the arrest of violent criminals in New York City, leading the nation with the most arrests amongst all 10 cities. The overwhelming success of collaborative law enforcement operations, as demonstrated in Operation North Star, proves the concept that at the national level, an integrated strategy can be implemented at the local level with the confidence and support of our entire community. The United States Marshal Service Regional Fugitive Task Force Commander, Chief Inspector Ed McMahon, will now explain and go into detail and the results of the Operation North Star that was completed here this past month.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Marshal Sozio. As the Marshal indicated, the results nationally of Operation North Star were a great success. We had over 1,400 fugitive apprehensions, including 230 for homicide. Well, let's talk about New York City. Here in New York City, the Marshal Service, members of our Regional Fugitive Task Force, NYPD's Fugitive Enforcement Division, and Borough Warrant Squads are out there every day locating and arresting the worst of the worst violent offenders in the city. So what was different about North Star? For this operation, the Marshal Service provided additional funding, manpower, training, equipment, and we also integrated members of NYPD's Borough Warrant Squads with our Fugitive Task Force members. Under the leadership of NYPD Chief of Fugitive Enforcement Mike Kletzel and U.S. Marshals Deputy Commander Pat Lynn, they developed a strategy to concentrate on the areas of the city that would have the greatest impact on violent crime. Therefore, our efforts were focused on the Bronx and Northern Manhattan. However, indicated in our significant arrests in the press release, we are a citywide task force, and we included, as many of those significant arrests indicate, we made apprehensions for violent criminals in Brooklyn, Queens, and also out-of-state fugitives who came to New York who were wanted for murder. We also apprehended and included in the operation. As the Commissioner noted, this is a prime example of precision policing. We know the criminal element is a small segment of the population, and we set out to target those drivers of violence who are identified and wanted. Fugitive enforcement and the execution of warrants is one of the most dangerous missions of law enforcement. As stated earlier, we significantly increased our personnel's workload, operational tempo during this time frame. Therefore, we provided ballistic shields and entry training to our NYPD Warrant Squad partners, and as a result, all of our 339 fugitive apprehensions were conducted safely. And ultimately, the goal is to have an impact on violent crime and make our community safer. But what also is important is that the people see teams of 10 to 12 members of law enforcement on their block, surging into their neighborhood and taking away the bad guys. It lets them know that the police are still out there doing the job to help keep them safe. I'd like to now introduce NYPD Chief of Detectives, James Essig.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be brief. Thank you, Ed, Chief Inspector Ed McMahon. Thank you, Ralph Sozio, U.S. Marshals. And I'd like to thank all the members of the Regional Task Force, some of who are standing off to my right, all our members and partners, including the NYPD Warrant Squad. All these men and women investigate and apprehend, bringing to justice some of the worst criminals in this city. These are very talented investigators who do a very, very difficult job. And as you see and hear today, they do that job so well. So to talk a little bit about the investigations, I want to turn it over to the Chief of the Fugitive Enforcement Division, Mike Kletzel.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Kletzel, CEO of Fugitive Enforcement Division for the NYPD. So this operation started, we discussed where we want to have the most impact. We decided Manhattan North and the Bronx, with all the violence going on. We figured with targeting those areas would have a great impact. NYPD and the Regional Fugitive Task Force has had a great partnership over the years. High-profile shootings, high-profile cases. This we got a little more direct, looking at for violent crimes that could have a great impact on the community we serve. So what we did was we took our Bronx Warrant Squad, a Manhattan Warrant Squad, and other members of other warrant squads and a Juvenile Crime Squad and put them together and dedicated them to enforcement of warrants. Then we had the enforcement of probable cause to arrest ICOD. All together in Manhattan North and the Bronx, we had 326 apprehensions, which is phenomenal. The men and women of the Fugitive Enforcement Division, along with the Regional Fugitive Task Force, did great work together. The biggest value of this is the training that these men and women got from the marshals. It improved their skills for the future. Overall, we locked up 104 people for robbery up in Manhattan North and the Bronx. We did, excuse me. Sorry. 109 people for robbery, 25 people for CPW gun, 9 people for murder, 15 people for non-fatal shootings, 8 people for reckless endangerment, shots fired that nobody was hit, but they were shot at. 114 people for felony assaults, 28 people for sex offenses, and that's just the crux of the main focus of it. So altogether, the men and women of the Fugitive Enforcement Division and the Regional Fugitive Task Force worked together seamlessly, and it was a very great success in this operation.
Any questions on this topic?
Can you tell us the number, do you have a breakdown of how many arrests per city that you might be able to share with us? Like you just broke down the different.
Well, this operation was in Manhattan North and the Bronx, so that's what we focused on.
Perhaps it's maybe for the marshals.
Yes.
Operation North Star, just tell us like the breakdown and ranking in terms of which cities had the most arrests.
Sure. So we just had a national press conference before this one in Washington, D.C. with the Attorney General. So on the back of the press release that we just handed out, we'll have a link to our website, which will have a breakdown of all the arrests. New York City, we closed 351 closed cases, 339 apprehensions for all of New York City, which was by far the most in the country. Behind that is Chicago. Other cities included Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Memphis, Los Angeles. I don't have those national numbers, but you can get it on the website there.
Yes, for you or Commissioner, this was a 30-day operation, so going forward, will you continue this relationship with this additional training and new equipment?
Yes, it's a great question, and I wanted that to be asked. So we're doing this every day at a different operational tempo. If we would keep up this 30-day operational tempo, we'd be burning guys out. Guys are doing double duty. So our Fugitive Task Force members and our Borough Warrant Squads are working double the time to make this impact and arrest this many people. And as I said, it's very dangerous. It's exhausting going in and apprehending dangerous people. And so if we kept this 30-day push, we'd burn out. If we had more manpower, maybe we could do it.
Can you revive it again at some point?
I'm sorry.
So, just to expand on that, NYPD personnel each week in the Fugitive Enforcement Division apprehend about 300 people a week. So this is our steady state of work. We work with the marshal in the high-profile case, like I mentioned earlier, which is phenomenal, the amount of work that gets done. But this particular operation was for those specific crimes. Citywide, on all crimes, we apprehend about 300 people a week from the Fugitive Enforcement Division.
Marshal.
Sure.
Since you talked about the fact that this was arresting
So I'll let them speak to the what happened after they got to court. You talk about the importance of arresting them. That is what we should do first. But they have to be held accountable after an arrest. They have to be prosecuted. They have to be detained when they're dangerous. So the arrest, the competency of an arrest is expected, and that's what we do. But we need them to be held responsible for their actions after that arrest happens.
Chief, for you, who is the worst? So number one, at the top of your list of people you arrested. Can you tell us that? They're arrested, so. What did they do? Or at least.
We locked up 9 people for homicide. So right there, and homicide's the worst crime we could go after. So we locked up 15 people for non-fatal shootings. We locked up 3 people for conspiracy to commit murder from the River Park Towers to take down the gun violence suppression did. There were 3 remaining people. We locked them up. So we locked up a lot of bad people.
Just to piggyback on that, if I can, I'm just looking at the list. There was a 7-year-old girl injured in a drive-by on June 9th. June 24th, 3 bodies were found in a police home. Travis Blake was arrested in those cases. Those are some high-profile movie cases that we covered. Could you possibly speak to those apprehensions?
Well, those are our bread and butter. That's what the Regional Fugitive Task Force does on a daily basis, and that's why we included those. But as you saw from the media, the Travis Blake case, that perp had killed 3 people, and the bodies were found decomposing in Queens, and we were able to track him and locate him up in Bar Harbor, Maine. That was that case. We also participated in, or the ones that you have listed here, other ones that we did not want to include, but we were participating in. It was part of the month, but we apprehended Isaac Agro, the perp that killed the 20-year-old mother on the Upper East Side. We caught him on July 1st, and that was after the date, so we didn't want to include that in here. But all those significant arrests, a couple of them are from out of state that you see here. The fireman that was killed in Philadelphia, we have that arrest. So we're getting the full gamut.
Which fugitive had been sought the longest, and how many others that you looked for were not found during this time period in New York City?
Well, I don't know if Chief Kletzel has that. We don't have the exact numbers. I mean, we had our target list. We're going to continue. We had some cold cases, or about 80 of them, that we made some headway on, and we're going to continue working those out of the task force. And as far as the speed, the key to arresting wanted people that know they're wanted is catching them very quickly. And I don't have the exact time frame. It could take. We're fortunate if we get in 48 to 72 hours, but it could take weeks. So I can't give you that.
In New York City, is there someone you grabbed that had been sought, let's say, for a couple of years?
No. No. So on this takedown, this operation, it was. Our turnaround was pretty good. We are looking for other fugitives. We're looking for one for a triple homicide from the Bronx, Sam Cross, who the task force is working with us, and we've been working with us for about 3 years now on this case, hand in hand, going all over the country looking for him, and that's our top target that we're looking for.
Could you folks talk about who might be, or who's the worst person that you've arrested who has already been released by the court system? And then, even if you can't get any specifics by the names, we talked about like what their offenses were.
Yeah, we don't. We apprehend. We don't track them after that, sir.
Any other questions? Darla, last question.
Commissioner, if we could, just a few months ago, we were all sitting in this room, we're talking about the different things the NYPD in New York City would be doing to stem a surge in gun violence in the city. Can you talk to us and speak to, in the whole landscape of attacking the surge in gun violence in New York City, how important is this, and will the regular person in the city see a difference with all of the arrests that have been made? Can you just kind of chime in on how this falls into the greater puzzle, please?
So as I said, we entered our 11th week of a decline in shootings and homicides, and we recognize what works and what we have to change, and we will pivot to accommodate anything that happens. These are real-time evaluations that we do every single day with my staff. We employed a number of different initiatives. We have neighborhood safety teams, we have enhanced deployment, we have a summer 40 plan. The public safety plan for New York City is as complex as the city itself, but it is working. This is a very difficult weekend for us to be able to police, but we did so. We had a number of different resources out there. We will continue to work every single day to provide the police officers out there to make the city safe.
Thank you, everyone.
One more. All right, just one more. Yeah, one more. Commissioner, yes, given that bail laws and bail reform issue is not going to change in the very near future, do you see where there might come a time where you're going to have to do this full court press on a regular basis and not just, so I understand people burn out and this is, overtime and additional people. But do you see this in order to crack down on these repeat offenders, violent offenders, that this is going to have to be done on a regular basis?
We will never stop advocating for changes that need to be made to those laws. We would like them to be able to consider dangerousness before they put a person back into the streets that can do more harm. So we will never stop advocating for that.
But how about the tactics that you're using and being that there was an effective effort here, that this would change and become a law?
We constantly have to adapt to the conditions that we have. If there is no change, which we hope there will be, I don't want to say that there will not be. We will always advocate for that. We will continue our initiatives and pivot so we can be the most successful.
All right, thank you.